G'day folks, welcome to another episode of the WP Elevation podcast where we help WordPress consultants turn their passion into a profitable business. My name is Troy Dean, I'll be your host, and I'm very excited to be saying hello to those of you watching live on Facebook. We've been live streaming the podcast here now for the last couple of months, which has been a very exciting innovation for us here and something that we've been wanting to do for a long time. And I'm also very excited that it's taken us almost 5 years to get this man on the show. I don't know why it's taken us that long, but anyway, he's here now. I'm speaking with none other than Nathan Ingram, the man behind the iThemes training and WordPress coach. How are you, Nathan?
I'm great, Troy. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Why has it taken us so long to actually make this happen?
I have no idea, but I'm great. I'm really happy to be with you.
And I'm very grateful to have you on the show. We are huge fans of iThemes. And of course, Corey Miller is one of my WordPress friends now, but was one of the men that I looked up to in the WordPress space when I first started out. And so just a huge fan of everything that you guys are doing over there at iThemes. I was talking to you just before we started rolling, your fantastic wall of WordPress behind you there. So just fill the viewers in on what that is for those that some may be able to see, some might not be able to see. But if you can't see behind Nathan, there's a whole bunch of lanyards on the wall there that are from different WordCamps, right?
Yeah. So I started collecting name badges from WordCamps where I've spoken or participated in some way. And I don't have all of them there, but it's made for a nice little wall and just, there are memories that are attached to each one of those badges.
Awesome.
People I've met and, folks that I've had good conversations with. So
yeah. I get FOMO living in Australia because it's just not as easy. I mean, there's a WordCamp every weekend in the States somewhere, and it's just impossible for me to get to them all. So I do get FOMO. My wall is nowhere near as impressive as that. But I bet I have more frequent flyer points from making the trip out there. So
I would imagine so.
Yeah. Hey, when I used to ask this question a long time ago on the podcast, and I haven't actually asked it for a while, and someone reminded me of it recently. They said, I really used to love it when you asked people when they were a kid, what did they want to be when they grew up? So I'm going to ask you now, when you were a kid, what were your ambitions? What did you want to do when you grew up?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. So, the first thing that pops into my mind is when I was in second grade, the teacher asked us to draw a picture of, what we wanted to be when we grew up. And at that point, I drew a giant telescope because I was going to be a scientist. I don't know what kind of scientist. I didn't know any better, but the idea of a white lab coat, I guess, sounded good. Definitely went a different direction than that.
Wow. What was it about? Did you enjoy doing science at school?
I did. Yeah. I was, I've been a geek forever. I was the president of the science club when I was in high school. So, yeah.
And what was it about running experiments in the lab that appealed to you?
I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm a magnet for useless information. So, there's always something new to learn. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. You have a real sense of curiosity about you, and I think that's why you're such a great teacher and trainer. And I really didn't enjoy science in school, but as an adult, I actually think of our business as a laboratory, and I think of every day as a series of science experiments and learning about what works and what doesn't work. What is it that how do you blend your curiosity and your business acumen?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I guess about half my time is still spent doing client work.
Mm-hmm.
I build websites for clients, mostly small business, nonprofit, professional firms. And, one of the great things I think about being engaged with clients is with every new client comes the opportunity to learn something new about an industry I didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that. Last year, for example, I built a website for a company that grows what I would jokingly call gourmet hay for racehorses. I didn't even know that existed. But there's a whole industry around this. And, it's a certain mix of different vegetation that fuels racehorses. And so, we got to build a website and learn a lot about what those folks did.
Wow. I was talking to Kim Doyle earlier on this morning, a mutual friend of ours, the WordPress chick, and she was saying that she's getting into the physical planner space. And we were talking about the whole subculture around physical planners on and digital planners on Etsy. So there's this whole marketplace over at Etsy where people are selling digital planners that you can fire up on the iPad and use instead of having a physical planner. And it never ceases to amaze me the rabbit holes that people go down and the kind of the subcultures that develop around these really super niche topics. How did you discover WordPress? What were you doing before you were building websites?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a number of ways to answer that question. So I built and sold my first website in 1995.
Oh, wow.
So I've been at this a long time. And for me, it was a way to make ends meet. So I was in the nonprofit space for a long time, serving small nonprofits. And, it wasn't enough to pay the bills. And so I was always doing some sort of IT consulting or, that sort of thing. And when the web came along, it was just a natural next step. And so I've used just about every tool there is. For many years, I was in the macro media ecosystem with Dreamweaver and Fireworks and all that. And I resisted WordPress for a long time. Matter of fact, I saw WordPress as a threat because my business model at that point was all about a few clients, high dollar retainers, people at websites. It was before the CMS revolution. And they would pay me hundreds of dollars a month to keep their website updated, add a picture, change some text, hosting, that sort of thing. So when WordPress came along, it was like, man, this is going to kill my business. And I remember telling somebody, I hate WordPress. It's going to run me out of business. And so, but then, the tidal wave was coming. And so I knew I had to pivot and started investigating WordPress. And I'll tell you, the one thing that really changed my mind about WordPress was a particular client that wanted to build a location finder. They had a number of locations and, integration with Google Map and all that. And I got a quote from a developer. It was about $3,000 to build this thing. And then I found a WordPress plugin for like $30. And I thought, there might be something to this whole WordPress thing. So that was 2009. And by 2010, I was all in for WordPress.
Yeah. I remember discovering the WordPress plugin repository for the first time, and I felt like the clouds had parted. And and I was seeing the light. I felt it was. I thought it was a hoax. I thought someone was actually playing a trick on me, and I thought it's not right that I can come in and grab all this functionality. Most of it for free. When I was starting out, I was using free plugins to learn how WordPress worked. I would install a free plugin. I'd be like, "You're kidding me!" Like that would have taken me 6 weeks to develop that on my own.
Exactly.
And I think that's really what fueled the growth of WordPress, was that plugin architecture. I think it was a stroke of genius when they implemented that. So when did you first start using WordPress? What version was WordPress at?
It was, somebody asked me that the other day, and it was 2.8 or 2.9.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I started dabbling, but I was all in at WordPress 3.
Yeah. And so then when did you start training? And before we talk about the relationship with iThemes, when did you start thinking, okay, I think I've learned some things about running my business and I think I want to teach or coach other people? When did that happen?
So it was around 2012 when I did my first training webinar, but I'm a teacher by nature. I was a pastor for many years. And so it was just I'm going to explain things to people until I'm dead,
Yeah.
So it was a natural thing for me to do.
Yeah. And did you, when you ran your first training webinar, did you instantly kind of think, okay, there's a business model around this, or was it something that you were just doing because you were passionate about it to begin with?
Oh gosh, I did it and I thought that was the worst thing I've ever done in my whole life.
Right.
Seriously, there is such a difference. I've spoken in front of groups for years and I love public speaking. I love, encouraging and engaging with a crowd. But when you are doing a webinar and you're looking at your screen, it's a completely different experience. You have no idea who's out there or what their responses are. There's no body language to gauge. And, I went back and reviewed it after, and I thought, well, it didn't sound that bad. But when I finished, I thought this was the worst thing I've ever done in my whole life. Yeah. So, but I kept doing it. And it was actually, my first webinar was with iThemes Training, which at that time was called webdesign.com.
That's right. Great domain name, by the way. Great domain name. Yeah.
but they just invited me to keep coming back, and I became a regular instructor. And beginning of last year, I took over as host.
Right. So here's the thing. You mentioned, I want to just park here for a second and explore this, because you mentioned that at the end of that first training webinar, you thought, well, that is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But then you went back and did it again. Like most people would just think, well, that was awful. That was horrible. It was just, I feel really insecure about this and it's damaged my confidence a bit and I'm just never going to do that again. Why did you keep going back and doing it again?
Oh, man. So this, it's imposter syndrome, right? We all have it. And the more you do something, and particularly something niche, the more you do something, you think it would go away, but it just gets worse. And the antidote, I think, to that whole syndrome is community. And that's why I love WordPress. The WordPress community is fantastic. For me, in that particular instance, it was the encouragement of other people who listened to the webinar and, said, man, you should keep doing this. And the person who was running training at that time, same way, you should really keep doing this. We want you to keep trying it. And so I tried it again and again, and now it's old hat. Yeah,
I'm just opening the comments here on the live stream because I do want to acknowledge some people who are watching. This imposter syndrome thing, the reason I'm opening is because I know the comments are going to go through the roof, because this imposter syndrome thing is probably the number one conversation we have at WP Elevation and Mavericks Club about overcoming that voice of self-doubt to take action. And Susan Jeffers wrote a great book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Right.
But there are some, I wonder if there's anything, so that's all great in theory, but you actually need some tactical things on a daily basis that support you to feel the fear and do it anyway. You just mentioned community. I wonder if there's anything else. How do you negate the self-talk, or how do you reprogram the self-talk and change the messaging?
Yeah, so, boy, such a good question. I think there has to be a balance of people externally speaking back encouragement to you that you are doing, but then at the same time, you actually have to be doing well, So, it's learning and growing and learning new skills and practicing and, the time invested to actually do something good, but then to have people around you who can reflect that back to you to say, you really are doing good work.
Yeah.
But you need to be doing good work to make sure those comments are authentic.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I once had an acting teacher who said to me, one of the most dangerous things you can do is come off stage at opening night and have a lot of, a bunch of people tell you that you are amazing when you know that you weren't. If you buy into their feedback, but you can kind of trick yourself into performing at a subpar level, but still thinking that you're doing okay because lots of other people are telling you that you're doing okay. You need to know internally that you're doing your best, right?
Right, exactly. And, I've got a story similar to that. For years, like I mentioned earlier, I was in ministry and I was a pastor. And, traditionally you go and greet people as they leave the building. And one of the older members of our congregation greeted me and said, "Oh, I really enjoyed what you had to say today." And I wasn't the one speaking. So, you learn to take some of those things with a grain of salt. But, having people speaking authentically into your world and recognizing things you're doing well, we all have a hidden genius. It's just the struggle is finding it.
Yeah.
And then really honing in on that strength and finding out, the thing, we're all really good at something and really bad at some other things. And I think our tendency is to try to get better at the things we're bad at instead of focusing on what we're really great at and then bringing in partners around us who can do the things that we're not as good at.
Yeah, 100%. I could not agree with you more. I want to explore this a little bit more. I just do want to give a quick shout out to Jeffrey Patch, who's watching on Facebook. Corey Hind says, "Greetings team, thanks for continually adding so much value to the business scene." And Jason Ryan gives us a thumbs up. If this idea of, I've been guilty over the years of giving myself such a hard time for not being where I think I should be at this stage in my life. And it's only been, I reckon, the last 2 or 3 years that I've kind of stopped doing that, and maybe it's just because I'm getting a little bit old and a bit cranky. But I'm really good at celebrating the wins and congratulating myself for doing well, and I'm really good at staying in my sweet spot and knowing what it is I do well. And here's what I've learned: even if you think you've done a terrible job on this training webinar or a podcast or whatever it is you're doing, or even if you know that you could do better, the fact that you've taken action and the fact that you've hit the publish button and you've put yourself out there in service of other people to help other people will appreciate that. And you're right, other people will acknowledge the work that you're doing for them and will think that you're amazing just for getting out there and doing it. They won't be critiquing your performance as much as you are. So one of the things I've learned over the years is the way for me to deal with my imposter syndrome is just to realize it's not about me. It's about the audience that I'm serving. And if I'm not going to let my self-doubt get in the way of me adding value to my tribe, because it wouldn't be fair to them.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Melanie Adcock says, hello, Nathan Ingram on Facebook. Hey, Melanie, thanks for watching. Right, let's have a talk about the relationship with iThemes. How did that relate? I'm going to make an assumption that it came about through you and Corey Miller, but it may not have. How did the relationship with you and iThemes start?
So this is a good story because I actually came to iThemes as a customer. I found, back in those days, iThemes, the name, they were one of the first commercial theme companies for WordPress.
Yeah.
These days, they're really not doing themes at all anymore.
Yeah.
But the theme that they had back in that time was a theme called iThemes Builder, which was really ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kept me away from WordPress for a long time was that every WordPress website looked alike.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm much more on the design side. I'm not a developer. I break PHP. I make things look pretty.
Yeah.
And Builder let me build. It let me keep my process intact of doing a visual design and rendering out then into WordPress. So I found Builder, and then I found Backup Buddy, which has become a huge part of what I do. Mm-hmm. And then webdesign.com was part of that whole membership. So that's actually where I learned WordPress.
Wow.
And then I met Corey probably a year after having become a customer.
Wow. And how did you meet Corey?
They actually had a live event at iThemes headquarters in Oklahoma City. And we drove up and met lots of folks, including Corey.
Wow. I can't speak highly enough of Corey and Lindsay. Actually, I met them at the first Pressnomics in Arizona. I went out there, was jet lagged, flew in, spent the afternoon sleeping, went to the bar that night for the pre-drinks before the show. And Lindsay was very pregnant at the time, so she was driving, which meant Corey was drinking. And Corey and I and James from OM4 here in Western Australia, we basically stood at the bar and proceeded to tell each other stories and get a little bit drunk that night, and it was fantastic. It was such a great night, and I just fell in love with Corey and Lindsay that night and how open they were, sharing their stories and their journeys. And Corey gave a presentation the next day at Pressnomics, and basically the message was, don't worry about what other people are doing. It doesn't matter what other people are doing because that's their story. The only thing that matters is your story and what your paying customers think. They're the only opinions that matter. And that had a huge impact on me, that presentation. So you start off as a customer, and then at some point, did they tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey Nathan, I think you should come and run a training webinar," or did you put your hand up and volunteer yourself?
So my first webinar was on a plugin that I'd been using in kind of a creative way. And I was talking to Benjamin Bradley, who at that point was the professor on webdesign.com.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned it to him, and he said, well, yeah, why don't you just come do a webinar? Okay, let's give it a shot. And then it just grew from there.
Wow. And what's your involvement with iThemes now? You said you're now the host of their training department? I
am. So I'm the host at iThemes Training. I plan and host all the webinars. For years, iThemes Training was a paid membership. Mm-hmm. We pivoted on that model. It's now open. We have 2 or 3 WordPress-related webinars, sometimes plugins, sometimes it's marketing, business development, all kinds of things for someone doing WordPress for a living. And all those are free. And we have once a month, there's some sort of a premium event that's a paid event.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And your your role is to design the curriculum and to host the trainings. Are you also bringing in other guests? The reason I'm asking is because I understand how much work is involved in running a curriculum and training WordPress businesses. I hope for your sake that you're bringing in other people to share the content delivery here.
Yes, without a doubt. Matter of fact, my biggest source for presenters is WordCamp. So I had the privilege this year of traveling. I'll do, I think it's 18 WordCamps this year around the country and some in Canada, and just finding the best presenters to come in and present. I present 2 or 3 times a month, and the rest are other presenters.
Gotcha. And so what's your split between doing client services and working with iThemes? What's the sort of the work the sort of the load balance there?
Yeah, so 40-50% of my time is spent doing client work, and the other 50-60% is pretty well evenly split between coaching other WordPress freelancers and solopreneurs, and doing the iThemes training work.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the WordPress freelancer who's starting out. You've spent a long time coaching these people, as have I. I'm curious if you could go back to your younger self when you were starting out and give yourself some advice that might allow you to avoid some mistakes or, fast track your results. What would the advice be to someone just starting out now as a WordPress freelancer, building a business, building websites for clients?
Man, I think the biggest mistake that I made, and it's, I think your biggest weakness is your biggest strength taken to an extreme. And for me, it was thinking I, A, could do, and B, had to do everything. Naturally, I'm a learner, I'm a doer, I can crank out the work, I'm a highly productive person. And, I reached a point in my world where that got to I went through burnout, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But I thought I could do everything, thought I had to do everything. There's a lot of people pleasing wrapped up in that. So my advice to my younger self would be, good grief, bring some people around you that can help you, because you can't do everything. And, for years, I tried to improve my weaknesses instead of capitalizing on my strengths, and bringing a community of people around me that could, be a team and do this way better than I ever could alone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the reason that we do that is because, one, we feel like we should improve our weaknesses. Two, and I've just realised over the years that you're actually more valuable if you just play to your strengths.
Right.
But two, I think we're afraid of cost, aren't we? I think we're afraid that I can't afford. Like, I'm not a designer, but I can't afford to hire a designer. When I was starting out, I was using premium themes and trying to customize them, and I wasn't very good at it. I can't afford to hire a designer. So how do and of course what I realise now is that if I'd hired a designer, then my results would have happened a lot quicker. My clients would have been a lot happier. I could have developed sites faster, which meant I could have, sold more sites, and the whole thing ends up paying for itself. But there is that initial fear, isn't there, of well, I can't afford to hire someone, so what do I do?
Yeah. I think, I look at someone in that situation now, and I think you got to let go.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much control and perfectionism wrapped up in that, especially, if you've got the guts to step out on your own and try to have your own business. I mean, you're a capable person, but you got to let go of some of the control and think that you have to do everything. You don't. And there's always a way. There's always some creative way to partner with somebody, to bring somebody in, to maybe trade some work, to do something to get more people with different and better expertise than you into your world.
What are some of the biggest, what are some of the most common problems that people come to you with as a coach? I'm running a WordPress business, I'm stuck here. What are some of the most common areas where they get stuck?
Yeah, gosh, I've started beginning my WordCamp talks with a statement like, and I'm speaking to a room full of WordPress solopreneurs, freelancers, whatever term you want to use, people trying to do WordPress and make money at it. And what I usually start off by saying is, there are probably some people in this room, probably some people listening to this podcast even perhaps, that are one more bad client or one more bad month away from throwing in the towel. And, I was there, I've been there. And, the thing is that all those problems are fixable. They're all fixable. and it's related to recurring revenue, building up, stabilizing your financial world with some recurring revenue. It's about detecting and fencing in bad clients so they don't wreck the rest of your world. It's about learning how to be more productive personally, so the time you do spend behind in front of the screen is actually you're actually getting stuff done. Those tend to be the three biggest areas.
Yeah, personal productivity is a big one, isn't it? A lot of people log on at the start of the day, they turn the computer on, they just start reacting to all of the stuff coming at them from the screen.
That's it. Yeah. So I've got a talk that's called Taming the Whirlwind. I've done it several WordCamps this year, and it's all about how to grow your business while you're still busy with client work.
Yeah, and that is a dance. That is an absolute dance that you have to do.
It is.
Time blocking in the calendar was probably the biggest aha moment I had with one of my mentors who he taught me how to effectively time block, which again is scary because there's kind of the FOMO that you're going to miss out on what's happening while you're doing deep work, but it's the only way to actually get your stuff done.
Exactly.
I'm curious, do you have clients outside of that you coach outside of the States?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. The majority of them, I would imagine, are in the States?
Majority in the States. I've coached some folks in Canada. I currently have a coaching client who's in the UK.
Awesome. Cool. And it's all delivered online through the wonders of Zoom video conferencing and
Zoom is wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic, isn't it? Where can people find out more about the coaching services that you provide?
Sure. So my website is nathaningram.com, and there's a coaching link right there in the header menu. I do coaching a couple of different ways. I coach individually, just one-on-one, but the most effective way that I coach is in our group model, which is called Advance. And it's sort of a hybrid, the best of one-on-one coaching and also the mastermind model. So in Advance, there's a one-on-one call where we talk through whatever the major issues are that the person is dealing with in a given month. But from that call, we identify one issue. And that issue is then brought to the group, and everybody in the group brings an issue. So it's a maximum of 6 in a group, all folks at roughly the same place in business, and everybody brings an issue, and the group helps to solve those issues together. And the beautiful thing about that model is it starts to solve a lot of the things that we've already talked about today. So like imposter syndrome, I'm bringing this issue. I feel like I'm the only one in this group that doesn't have it together. I've got all these problems, but then wait a minute, I've got the answer to that issue this other person brought, and I just went through that and I solved it. So now I can be helpful to this person, and that really does a good to build confidence.
Yeah.
Also, we start out all of our group calls with celebrations. So celebrations are so important because when you're running your own business, especially a technical business, there are very few people that can appreciate the really cool solutions that you found. I mean, I've been married for almost 25 years now, and I can come up with this great solution, and I'll go upstairs and tell my wife, wow, you won't believe what I figured this out and that. And she's like, that's awesome. Can you clean the kitchen now? So but you share those things with people who are, walking the same path as you, and they're like, gosh, that was amazing. So you rally together, you celebrate together, and then you help each other solve problems. So that's what Advance is about, and it's one of my favorite things that I do.
Yeah, awesome. I must say, group coaching is definitely one of my favorite things in the world to do as well. And I just need to acknowledge some people listening to this might think it's a bit weird because we're potentially competitors in this space, but we had a good chat about this pre-show. I wonder if you could just repeat for the audience what you were saying to me about the fact that we're potentially in the same space, but we don't see each other as competition.
Yeah, exactly. I think WP Elevation and what I do in Advance go hand in hand. There's a lot more granular detail inside of WP Elevation, but there's also the benefit of having a coach / consultant in some ways who is with you every week, with you, as needed, once a month in a call, every week in a call, whatever, to help to hold you accountable, provide soft accountability, answers, just encouraging you to continue to grow. Matter of fact, Melanie, who said hello a minute ago, is in my group now, and she's been an elevator for a long time.
Yeah. And I know that I can say the same about you, and I've had this conversation with Sean Hesketh too, who runs a plugin which is very similar to video user manuals, but I'm an abundant thinker. I believe the world is a big place, and there's plenty of people that need our help, and there's plenty of plenty of work to go around. And some people resonate with different types of personalities. So I've never felt threatened by competition. I think it's a good thing. It actually helps us keep us on our toes and makes us keep innovating and stops us from getting complacent. Awesome. And so what's the where can people find you on iThemes? Where's the best place for people to reach out to you there?
Yeah, so training.ithemes.com, or just go to ithemes.com and click the training link on the menu. There's our library of free upcoming webinars that are there. We're scheduled out 2 or 3 a week all the way into December at this point. All those, again, they're free. Register and join us. Most of them occur Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays around 1 o'clock Central Time, so kind of a midday time frame.
Yeah, awesome. Which is early morning for us here, but not too early. Then, but we can still make those times, which is good. Fantastic. Sure. Hey, Nathan Ingram, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it. I can't believe it's taken us so long to get you on the show, but I'm glad we finally did it. And look forward to following your adventures over at nathaningram.com and training.ithemes.com. Thank you for being a part of the WP Elevation podcast.
Thanks, Troy. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Cheers. All right, folks, there you go. That's how you record an episode of a podcast live onto Facebook. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments there. Not sure exactly when this episode will go live, but keep your eyes on the WP Elevation podcast over at iTunes. You can find that by just going to wpelevation.com/iTunes. Subscribe to the podcast, and when this episode gets pushed out, you'll get a notification in your favorite podcatcher. Thanks for being a part of the show. We look forward to seeing you again on the show soon. Until then, I'm Troy Dean. Go Elevate.